Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. So, when you launch this on Steam, it runs an older version of ScumVM, so it's just easier to generally buy the game, just like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and then simply just add the game using a newer version of the ScumVM virtual machine. There is something I did notice over here that's kind of interesting is you have like potentially LAN, which I have no idea what you would actually be able to do with the LAN connectivity. Um, because that seems like you could maybe set up a server. I don't know what file protocol this would be, if this is just FTP or what. So that you could have like a server in your house holding each of the ScumVM files, which doesn't really make a lot of sense that you bother to even program it, but it kind of highlights how experimental and frankly um, advanced ScumVM has become in general, because they've covered all the Scum games. They've moved on to, I believe, AGS games to emulate. The only reason they're even still calling it ScumVM is because it's just a very recognizable name. Also, over here, they have cloud connectivity. So theoretically, you could have a Dropbox or a OneDrive or Google Drive or just a box. I guess that's box.com, to have a online storage for all your files, which, yeah, that's interesting to say the least, because they're such small files. It's like, even if you had just like 10 megabits down, 10 megabits up, you'd have plenty of time to download all the files. um, Indiana Jones and Fate of Atlantis, for instance, the talkie version that has voice acting was a CD-ROM, so at most 800 megabytes, probably closer to 650 megabytes of file at in total. There's also a text-to-speech function, amongst other things that you could certainly adjust, and that's not really even highlighting anything particularly new, because they haven't even put out a major improvement to a new version of ScumVM since September 14th, 2020, which I'm playing this now in May of 2021. Um, I'm going to be using high quality 2x with pixel perfect scaling, full screen mode, and filter graphics, whatever filter graphics does. Uh, so, as far as Indiana Jones, now, we did Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That game didn't have voice acting. It had very pixely graphics. It was zoomed out quite a bit. The music was very 8-bit, as far as the sampling, and or very MIDI, probably, as far as the way the music is encoded. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis takes it to the next level, which is weird because it does mean they are skipping the middle step of the Indiana Jones movies, which is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That game never got a Scum VM point and click adventure made for it. And while there were some Temple of Doom NES games, and frankly, there was a cavalcade of different Indiana Jones games made, none of them are good quality and none of them are worth mentioning, which is kind of a shame, because that means we don't get Willie, or Short Round, and we don't get any story in the Indiana Jones uh, universe that is set around a mystical, ancient stones and a different religion. The Last Crusade, um, oddly, is the last movie, so we also didn't get anything that covered the Ark of the Covenant, which, yeah, I guess that kind of highlights the factor that the Indiana Jones movies didn't really get the Scum VM games made until They had already released the third movie. Now, thankfully, I guess there was never a Kingdom of the Crystal Skull point-and-click adventure game, but there probably should. Like, it would make all the sense in the world for Disney, now owning LucasArts, and to simply put a couple of interns on it to say, hey, why don't you go make an old ScumVM game with around all the Indiana Jones movies that didn't exist uh, before this point, and that it would at the very least give them some work that they could give to Harrison Ford, where Harrison Ford is pretty old, and I don't know if he really wants to do voice acting for a video game or not, but it would be a great way to keep him busy and give him some employment, uh, particularly when everybody is sitting around doing nothing because of a pandemic. And it would be so easy. Now, part of the problem there, of course, is that Indian point-and-click adventure games are only so popular. And if you were going to do it, there really is no reason to use ScumVM as much as it would make more sense to simply just use the Unreal Engine and make it feel like a point-and-click adventure game, even putting in more modern ideas. If anything, I would say Fate of Atlantis being the last Indiana Jones ScumVM game, because the other two games on Steam which are the Emperor's New Tomb and the Emperor's Tomb and the Infernal Machine, both of those aren't ScumVM games. It would definitely make a lot of sense to move more in that direction and make something closer to Uncharted than it would be to make a point-and-click game. Let's start. So we've got the LucasArts logo. A little bit of black bars on the sides and the bottom, but that's how you get pixel perfect instead of stretching it out. Now what's interesting is how this game looks compared to even the screenshot on the Steam page. Because I'm looking at my Steam library on my second monitor, and it literally is just this same scene, but the colors and the resolution look considerably different. Part of that is because one monitor is way newer, and so the color balance is way off, certainly, but also the ScumVM engine is filtering and kind of actively dynamically remastering it.
All right, Jones, how you gonna find that statue and all this junk?
I would say Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis is also the most advanced ScumVM game. After this point, they had to move to like Grim Fandango and the 3D residual technology. And went from 3D to flat 2D images. So it would take a little bit more money, certainly, to have 3D images or models of Indiana Jones for Indiana Jones games, but honestly, Disney should be doing something with the whole Lucasfilm, LucasArts things. This is kind of a genius tutorial, and it's kind of long, but it establishes a few things. First of all, he crashes into the action. No explanation as to why he whip swing into this area. You hear him speak for the first time. Now, there was a non-talkie version of this game, and so then you would have just seen him talk. And you cannot do anything. There's no item bar, there's no action verbs. They've gotten away from that. All you can do is click on things. And so you can hover around, and we're looking for some
Marcus
object.
still thinks this chest belonged to Columbus.
Because this is all voice acted,
Genuine candlestick.
there's quite a lot of dialogue here,
It's a copy of an Egyptian statue of Horus.
but I don't think
It's
there's
a copy of an Egyptian statue
any
of Horus.
cycling going on, so it's just repeated over and over again.
Gargoyle, or good imitation.
Now, listening to the voice acting here, this probably isn't actually Harrison Ford, but it would be
It's a stone carving of Shiva.
hard to tell, really, because of the time that this would have come out. So, there's a lot of things in the foreground you can't click on. There's a gargoyle, there's a chest, there's a candlestick, a statue. Now, you never get back into this area, but then this game does reset itself in kind of a funny way so that you want to potentially play it 3 times minimum.
Some kind of funeral urn.
And
Poor Marcus. He thought this was a Maasai warrior.
and so what we'll try to do in covering this game is I'm going to point out a odd decision in the creation of this game. In the middle, it splits you up and it goes on 3 very separate branches. But it's like 2 or 3 hours into like a 6-hour game. So if you were to legitimately play it and not know about the break and not save scum, which is what I'm going to do, then you are going to end up playing, I would say about 8 hours of redundant content to see 4 extra hours of new content. So you can see maybe an outline here of a floor panel. You come over here, you click at the statue, you stand on it, you fall down. That is reminiscent of the trapdoors in The Last Crusade. And we still are in the credits, so you were supposed to fairly quickly actually make it to that point. But of course I'm taking a while. This is interesting, falling down and getting back up. There's a big crate over here. There's a totem pole over here. There's an arrowhead over here. There's some shelves. There's a rope. And then there's a gaping hole. And this is kind of where the game starts to play.
Looks like beadwork from the Phoenix collection.
So effectively, this is supposed to be
Label
a
says
museum.
Unidentified potsherds.
Interesting. I think that's supposed to be pot shards, but maybe that's the joke, is that they misspelled it. This is supposed to be the museum that theoretically either Marcus collects a bunch of items,
Thought potlatch Indians carved this. Looks like a movie prop to me.
or Indiana Jones sometimes puts items in.
Looks like textiles from the Shaman collection.
And see, those might be inside jokes.
It's from the Shaman collection. Very sharp.
And so then you could look at the gaping hole,
Looks dangerous.
and then you look at the rope, and when you grab for the rope, it falls down and knocks you down. And so you're just falling. Very Looney Toony, very cartoony. Not really in line with what the Indiana Jones series of movies are. And arguably, I think that is because of that. I think that's why I might enjoy the Fate of Atlantis more than I even enjoy the Indiana Jones movies, because they take themselves a little too seriously. They are just actiony. In their initial releases in their day, there probably was a high focus around that idea, and a lot of excitement around the action in the Indiana Jones movies. But the long-running effect certainly is going to be more for the comedy in the video games for me, but not for most people.
I don't need them. They're just textbooks.
So if I right click, I just walk somewhere, by the way.
I think I've read them all. It's an old lecture hall desk.
Now, there's more to this tutorial than just the fact that you're learning that you can hover over things to find out what they click, what they are. That's not something you can turn off. You wouldn't be able to play the game if that was the case.
Nothing of importance here.
But this is also establishing a puzzle that is gonna come into play later. So, yeah. Now, after this initial sequence, where it comedically has you just fall down over and over again, this definitely feels like closer to Day of the Tentacle than
better get that roof checked.
Than an Indiana Jones series. It pretty much goes serious after this point, so you don't have to worry too much. Now notice in this room there is only this book and these cat figurines.
It's a book ready to fall.
Now the reason why it makes you play the game 3 times over is because some of this is randomized. The main goal, you don't really know, is to find a book. But there's multiple places where the book can be.
A cheap copy of a Siamese idol.
Let's see. Yep. That one's a real cat. Yeah, Doug Lee as Indiana Jones. Though it's not Harrison Ford. It would make a lot of sense to bring back Harrison Ford and make just a whole collection of Indiana Jones point-and-click adventure games. That they would be cheap and easy to make. You just need to do something.
It's too slippery to walk up.
To keep people thinking about Indiana Jones. Same is true for like Star Wars. Here it's an R2-D2 reference there. But yeah, Disney should have something coming out. And theoretically, Disney should be putting out a blockbuster from a different field every year. So there should be like a Marvel movie, then a Star Wars movie, then a Indiana Jones movie. I don't know if there are too many other LucasArts or properties that they own. They can certainly double up as far as the cartoon movies. Now there is one problem here, in that if you click on something and you will potentially be standing in front of it, so you may have to kind of walk out of the way to see it. And notice that just a left click alone opens this door. There's no special there's no special thing, no action wheel like full throttle. So they've really dumbed down the gameplay in this tutorial. Now some of that comes back later. Like, I do think we get an inventory. I do think we actually get some action verbs later. And I said we were looking for a book. We are, but not yet. We are instead looking for this, which is always going to be in one of those 3 lockers. And at that point you walk out of this museum. And this definitely was made by Ron Gilbert. You can feel that comedy. And into the college, which we had seen in The Last Crusade, but now it's been completely redrawn and redone. And actually, we don't spend, I think, any time inside the college other than to just immediately go to his office. And so this is his office from a very different angle. Clearly that's a Nazi German accent.
What was your name again?
Smith. Tell me, find a lock to match my key?
You bet I did. Take a look.
So
What are you waiting for? Let's
you have a
open it.
jump in to see the animation.
Why not? It's an obvious fake.
You may think so, Doctor, but I believe we are opening a new chapter in history.
My word, Indy, a small metal bead. Jewelry, perhaps?
If all it took was a
I still
square
think it's a fake.
to unlock that, you wouldn't need a key.
Then you won't mind if I take it.
Ready, Mr. Smith.
Stand back, gentlemen.
I hope you've got a getaway car waiting. You'll need one.
So he immediately gets robbed,
What is flips?
and so the action is just a cutscene, and the fighting is just a cutscene instead of in Fate of Atlantis, in The Last Crusade, where there was that whole fighting mechanism. Now the fighting mechanism does come back into play,
What's this?
but it's a little bit easier.
Klaus Kerner, huh? Good lord, Indy, the man's some sort of agent from the Third Reich. What does the spy want with the Buddhist statue? I lied, Marcus. I don't think it's a phony. I can't place the style, but it's old. Look what else our friend was carrying. An old copy of National Archaeology. And there you are in Iceland. Yeah, field supervisor. for the
These are
Jap
just
Corps
like
was
photos.
My first real job. Who's the woman? Sophia Hapgood. She was my assistant, a spoiled rich kid from Boston, rebelling against
So
her
we have a new female companion, and she's a pretty good female companion.
She gave up archaeology to become a psychic.
The thing,
How odd.
since they're still
You can say
fighting the
that again.
Nazis in Fate of Atlantis, this, I suppose, has to take place before
Indy,
Kingdom
Colonel
of the
found
Crystal
you. What
Skull.
if he finds her? We should warn the woman.
You can see how the
You're right. I
audio
want to know more about that statue.
still kind of takes forever to load up one line of dialogue.
You know,
There's
Marcus,
only
the
enough.
oldest year of my life was the one I spent in Iceland with Sophia.
There's only enough RAM basically to load a sentence or two of dialogue, or load in a new level or new animation. So you could easily remaster this whole game, and just remake it without changing any of the writing, and just put new animations over it, and new things. Okay. Like, just new graphics, new audio, have it move faster. It is fairly slow. So, at this point, this is where we should first save. And we're gonna, with the new system, we're gonna take that and save there. And that way, now we will see that this has a snapshot here. This is something the new ScumV engine does, where is the old ScumV engine just had you type in names, and you had to type in a name. It wouldn't just automatically put in autosave or anything like that. Actually, we probably should save a new save too. That way, in case it does just happen to choose to autosave, we don't accidentally run over that autosave position of 0. There's very little variety up until that point. But now there is some variety. Like, some of it is not much. And it does create this weird scenario where I could get into Madame Sophia's psychic performance here, and with a minimal number of moves, or I can collect everything and then decide how I'm going to get in. So we do have the 9 verbs. We don't have the 12 verbs, so there is no what is, there is no talk to, there is no what is the other one that's often common? I don't even remember. I'd also say pretty much picking up, you don't use that much. Looking at, you barely ever use. Give, you barely ever use. Open, close could be just open or close. So, also when you hover over something, you already are on a default setting. So you click on this with the left mouse button and you immediately look at it.
This was taken a long while ago. I thought we might like each other.
Yep. There is, I think, also, I think a point that needs to be made, that the problem with the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is not that it's a crystal skull and that it's some ancient aliens hogwash that most people wouldn't have even known about or ever heard about, or versus Atlantis being at least something people vaguely heard about. The problem with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is the way the movie is shot. The scenes they choose to shoot, the dialogue and the conversations, the action scenes they choose this scene shoot. You could take that general basic story and make a point and click adventure around Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and it would work perfectly fine. And Fate of Atlantis kind of is going to prove that. Plus, you are between a rock and a hard place here, because either you continuously make Indiana Jones stories around Judeo-Christian artifacts, which just become more and more difficult to make sense. Like, they went from the Ark of the Covenant, which is the most powerful relic, almost certainly from the Old Testament, to the Cup of Christ in the Last Crusade, which is more than likely the most powerful relic of the New Testament. You can't really go back and try and say, let's get the apple from the Garden of Eden. That's not really believable. The Staff of Moses you could do, but it's not going to be potentially that interesting either. After you're talking like the Staff of Moses or manna, which is in the Ark of the Covenant. I think the Staff of Moses may be in the Ark of the Covenant too. There really isn't a lot more. Like the Death Shroud of Jesus, the Shroud of Turin. That's what they thought the Shroud of Turin might be, and scientifically proved it wasn't. Like, you really would run out of Judeo-Christian items, so you have to go into other ideas. And there's definitely room for that, for powerful objects in other religions, and that's what Temple of Doom tried to do, and then they gave up on that. Or you get rid of that crutch and you just have Indiana Jones going for artifacts in general. Like, Indiana Jones looking for an artifact that isn't magical would be a very good twist on the 4th or 5th movie in the series, which they are making a 5th movie in the series. So yeah, if you just shifted it to the point where he's just fighting bad guys and finding artifacts, and the message of a movie is, no, this artifact isn't magical, it doesn't do anything, it just has hugely significant value, like that would work. Like, we don't really need the special effects. That is all things Steven Spielberg was pushing to the limit back then, but it's not things that he was pushing to the limit even in Crystal Skull, and that was another complaint, is that the CGI gophers and the visual effects weren't particularly that new or exciting, let's start playing the game. So you can walk with the left button, but it highlights the default action sometimes with the right. So to talk, all I need to do is just right click. I could come over here and click talk and talk to her.
The show's sold out, sir.
So you have your default dialogue, which clearly in a modern game, and this is where you wouldn't want to build something in ScumVM, and you would just want to use Unreal Engine to simulate the idea of a point-and-click adventure. Clearly you would want these options to show up as kind of a dialogue wheel. We've seen that with Telltale games, we've seen that with Mass Effect. It's just like, okay, here's your dialogue wheel in the middle if you're using a controller, or if you're using a mouse, then bring up a dialogue wheel closer. It doesn't really make sense to have to go all the way back down here, and so you can say anything you want, but it's not going to matter.
No seats, no standing room, no exception.
So yeah, she's not going to let us in.
Excuse me.
Come back next week.
And
Excuse me.
Come back next week.
you're going to just get the default thing. So we've got a newspaper. Let's look at the newspaper.
It's today's paper.
Let's go ahead and pick up the newspaper, which I suppose if there is a newspaper sitting on a closed newsstand, it is very close to being free
It's today's paper.
instead of
Doesn't seem to open.
although technically I suppose that still is stealing, but yeah, this is such an old-fashioned idea. Just this one scene, old-fashioned cars, a newspaper unattended, there's no vending machine to sell newspaper, which even a vending machine to sell newspapers, and the idea of newspapers even really existing nowadays is so old-fashioned. You have a phone booth, which is a non-existent thing, really. Let's use the
I
phone
can't make
booth.
a call. I'm out of nickels.
So nickels to pay. Let's see what happens if we open the phone
Doesn't
booth.
seem to open.
Let's see if we push the
I
phone
can't
booth.
move it.
By
Can't
having
move it.
a smaller collection of objects,
Can't pick
it's
that up.
easier to brute force something. Okay, so then you have a back door, and then you have a fire escape. So you have a puzzle here in which you would push a bunch of crates to get to the fire escape, or you open this back door and you fight this guy,
It's unlocked.
or you talk your way past the guy.
What do you want, pal?
Hmm.
This ain't no ticket office.
Okay. So let's just see if we can save ourselves some time here. We will make a save, and what we're gonna do is talk our way through. Now the thing here is this guy is stupid, but he loves the psychic lady. So if you go, let me in your Darwinian nightmare, it's a fight. If you go with this one, I believe, if I recall correctly, it's been probably 15 years since I played this game, but yeah.
I'm here to enjoy Madam's outrageous orations.
This ain't that kind of show.
So there's some rhyming there, certainly. They're trying to make the game interesting, particularly if you don't hear the voice acting. Once they get past this point in all games where talkies, you didn't really have to have as clever writing, or didn't try for clever writing. So, oh, I hear she's practicing sophistry in public. I think there's a misunderstanding here. Of course not. Madame Sophie's a serious
Oh,
thinker.
of course not. Madame Sophia is a serious thinker.
Don't kid around, pal. You're talking about my idol.
Let's see. So here you can either insult her or continue to try and butter him up.
No kidding. I think she's the greatest.
Me too. There's something about her.
So yeah, he's an idiot though, so you don't want to go with she's very pretty. She's got a great cerebellum. Yeah, she's very smart. Let's go with very smart.
Yeah, she's very smart.
Smart, I'll say. You know what I really like? It's the way she...
Let's see. And see, you just have like 3 out of 4 options to fail here.
The way she makes things easy to understand.
And one of the ways is to potentially
All that smart stuff seems so easy
like
when I'm
sexualize her,
Hey, you're okay
and
for a college boy.
that won't work either, I don't think. So there are 3 branches in the game. Let's go ahead and save here. And in each branch, there's a intelligent path. There is a there is a fighting path, and then there is kind of a talking path. So that was the talking path.
I'm here to enjoy Madame's outrageous orations.
This ain't that kind of show.
So we'll go down this path.
Oh, of
We'll
course
go
not.
down here.
Madame Sophia is a serious thinker.
Don't kid around, pal. You're talking about my idol.
No kidding. I think she's the greatest.
So you get to like the 3rd click here.
There's something about her.
Yeah, she's very pretty.
That goes without saying. Good night.
And see, so if you do that, it just says good night, or you can go, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
What now, buddy?
So yeah, that doesn't get you in, certainly, if you just say she's pretty. Now we have some different lines of dialogue, but I don't think any of that would work.
You Darwinian nightmare.
Was that an insult?
Well, what do you think?
See, it's kind of asking you
Find a fancy Dan college boys who use
to confirm whether or not you want to go.
apologize.
Well, why should I, you fat tub of lard?
So it really is making it easier.
Put up your
Whereas some previous games, it hasn't really. So right click, left click, not really doing anything different.
And there's more where that came from.
Is that meatball gone?
So yeah, you could win by fighting your way in. Not really worth struggling through that. I mean, I could certainly try to win that way, but with the mouse clicking feature of just left click and right click, I don't believe middle mouse or mouse wheel or anything like that would change it. And he isn't particularly the easiest of people to defeat as far as fighting. Honestly, I think if you are taking the fighting route in in this game, you are doing yourself a disservice. Let's see. And then you gotta walk around to push it again. And see, the default would be to look at the fire escape, but it doesn't matter.
You must be the new doorman. About time they got rid of Biff. He was such a pushover.
So that's the puzzle solution, which we'll go ahead and overwrite this one. So the next part about this is, even if you did talk your way in or fight your way in, you are going to have a puzzle that you have to actually solve. So you can, I think in this instance, say whatever you want, although the most logical thing in the real world is to start off nice and only get mean if you have to.
I want a reading with Miss Hapgood.
Are you crazy? During the show? Write a letter.
Okay. So you have a right, middle, and left lever. You have this ghost prop, which clearly this ghost prop exists because of what's going to happen later, and that this is part of the kind of fraudulent thing that she does, although she's really just giving
Still impossible.
a performance. So we can try and talk to her,
Hold on.
and he'll stop you.
You can't go out there. Take it easy and watch the show.
Here, my friends, is Atlantis, as it might have appeared in its heyday.
So
Glorious,
they give you this, and this is
socially
helpful
and technically
because it establishes which Atlantis they're talking about in this game,
advanced beyond our wildest dreams.
and what they're imagining it as,
5,000 years ago, while
not
everyone else still went
not some
around
other
sleeping.
thought. So it's not, say, Aquaman's Atlantis at the bottom of the ocean with like mermaid and mermen running it.
Centuries later, the famous philosopher Plato wrote about it. He placed Atlantis on a continent out in the deep ocean and described how it was divided into 3 circular parts.
And
Such as
some
you
of this
see here.
information actually turns out to be somewhat useful later on in the game. And so yeah, they're telling you that they will specifically it will just go on forever.
Hey, she's just coming to the exciting part.
What befell the serene city? We may never know for sure.
Now you could potentially
Sea level slowly
finish
getting
this
higher,
puzzle
slowly
earlier, but you want to see
suddenly
this at
shifting.
least the first time.
However it happened, panic must have gripped the citizens. On that fateful day when proud Atlantis sank beneath the waves.
There is a TV show that went on for several seasons called The Librarians, which also
Perhaps it was a volcanic eruption,
which came from a
and
movie
something
series
remains
called The
even now.
Librarian,
On some question,
singular,
the great spirit who guides my
and
heart,
there's like 5 movies around
the
that.
all-seeing Nurab Sal, is silent.
So
Been through this 100 times. The woman never stops.
so you could easily mine the depths of those episodes of The Librarians for more artifacts, because that's all The Librarians really is an Indiana Jones clone. Whereas something like Friday the 13th, the series with its cursed artifacts, doesn't quite fit with what you would try to do with Indiana Jones. And yeah. So we'll try one more time and see what happens.
Hey, she's still talking.
So yeah.
Still beautiful, still impossible.
I believe at a certain
Hold
point she
on.
just says blah blah blah
She's
blah blah
still
blah.
talking.
Yep. So you get just those two things. So we need to get rid of this
Excuse me.
guy.
Yeah, what now?
And I think there's really only one solution here. Wait, let's try for some other solutions. Let's go with you've been
Madam
fired.
told me to tell you you're fired.
What? You can't fire me.
Oh yeah? Oh no, take a look at my wallet. My driver's license. Take a look at my union card. A union would never fire somebody. Well, they might fire a person in a union from a position on a union board, but it would always be management that would fire somebody. Driver's license and wallet. All of these are illogical answers.
Oh no? Take a look at my union card.
Stop pestering me and watch the show, will ya?
So you can certainly see how
Excuse
games
me.
like these aren't going to breadcrumb
Yeah, what
you,
now?
and how this could get really frustrating. It does help you a little bit. You can't just go and click the same thing over and over again, and you can pretty much assume that the bottom line of dialogue is going to simply be the cancel option as far as dialogue goes. So you could brute force this.
You
You
look
could
tired.
also
Would you like to
try
call it a
to
day?
hear every single line of dialogue.
Nah,
It's
sooner or
probably
later I
not
get the one
worth
that
it.
goes out there. That's always a big moment.
So this guy is supposed to be Nurab Sal.
Excuse me.
Yeah, what now?
You know, this lecture bores me stiff.
Me too, to tell you the truth.
So yeah, now we have only
Excuse me.
one line of dialogue left,
Yeah, what now?
but now they've cycled into something different.
Isn't there something you'd rather be doing?
Like what? Show business is my
There's
whole life.
no achievements or anything like this.
Don't you ever read?
So
Sure,
it's
it's a hobby of mine.
gonna be worth it for me to just jump to the answers.
What if I give you something to read?
I might take a look.
So the hint here is, do you give them this or the newspaper? And you're pretty much going to keep this throughout the entire game as just your default starter object. I think so. It is the newspaper, but let's see what happens if we give this to him.
Here.
No thanks. I read it years ago. I still got my own copy.
So he won't take that. So we give him the newspaper.
Here.
Well, the late edition. I wonder if the Dodgers won. Watch the lights while I find out, okay?
So yeah, you can see how pixely these characters are, and there's no level of real improvement there. If it was one black pixel equaled an eye, well, then that's all you've got without remastering the game. And there are definitely modern considerations you would try for this. So now we've got to get her to stop, which you could try and just walk to her,
Hold on.
but it'll just stop.
I still got my eye on you.
So no good for that. But we can push levers. So this is a puzzle as far as getting all the levers and the red lights to go green. Right, so that was one. And that was two. And so let's see if this does three. Nope. Like, there's a little button here. So once you get it green, you push the button and it releases Norab Sal.
There it goes.
And I still feel the presence of Atlantis through... May I present Norab Sal, the great Atlantean god of...
Deceit.
deceit. Thanks, Indy. Indiana Jones? You've got some nerve. Go back, you big jack-o'-lantern.
So yeah, still very Looney Toony, cartoony. Yeah, and it does kind of keep that cartoonishness
Come on, mister. I've got a few words to
throughout the entire game. More than even Last Crusade, where
I'd say it's
Last
about time.
Crusade just tried to follow the events of the movie. There is no movie here.
No!
Looks like Kerner got here first. Stay put.
And so you come into the scene and actually you kind of do nothing. Like, you walk into the room, and then he runs around and looks for this guy, and he does a terrible job of looking for the guy, because see how this is like a film, that the camera stays and shows the bad guy, whereas most video games would always be from that first or third person perspective, and you wouldn't see this scene. Then he walks away, shrinking in the parallax.
That's the second time Kerner slipped away. What does a Nazi spy want with old statues?
Have you seen the newspaper? Listen to this. Germans claim victory in worldwide race to smash the Uranian atom.
So this is before like nuclear bombs had happened, which Crystal Skull, you have an actual nuclear bomb go off. So here's your response. It's like practical results are years away, which I don't think they were that many years away. A few atoms won't even light a match. There's plenty of atoms all around the world, so that's not true. They never find enough uranium. They did definitely find enough. Sounds like they're dreaming to me. Any of these are response are fine. This dialogue doesn't matter, so just whatever floats your boat.
Come on, a few atoms won't even light a match.
Of course not. That's why they're looking for the power of Atlantis.
You get the basic same response,
serious?
no matter what you said there.
I used to think you'd make a good scientist.
Yet you've been concealing. And see, here's a weird choice, because you kind of don't know anything about this character. This is just a made-up character. She's not in any movie. Originally, the Indiana Jones movies were supposed to have that main female character from Ark of the Covenant follow into Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And it is the same name character in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Ark of the Covenant, I believe, but it's a different actor. So it's easy to not catch that. Where it would have made a little bit more sense to have a main female lead and have Indiana Jones just being known as a womanizer in the past, instead of him getting a completely different female lead and kind of feeling like a womanizer in the present. But yeah, so I can say she can be concealing important artifacts, that she stole things from his expedition. You've been dealing goods on the black market, yet you never published a word about your finds. So you could accuse her and then basically establish her as either being a thief, a person selling on the black market, a lazy person who never published any of her finds, or you could accused her of doing the exact same thing Indiana Jones does. Like, in Ark of the Covenant, instead of screaming up and down and publishing a paper that he's seen the Ark of the Covenant, and that the government took it away, he just stays silent. He does the exact same thing in Temple of Doom, and frankly, I don't even think the US government cared anything about the stone artifacts, so he could have easily published a paper around that, but he didn't. Otherwise, he'd be a celebrity around that story. Same is true for the Last Crusade, Cup of Christ. No publishing, no statements, or anything. Like, he is one of the worst archaeologists ever to be shown in media. So let's go with that one.
Yet you've been concealing important artifacts. Artifacts such as archaeology has never seen.
That is so ironic for him to even
You're
make
lucky
that
I don't
claim.
have you arrested.
And there she quickly changes behind
So
the
what
thing.
if I kept a few pieces for myself? Look for a small coppery bead under those clippings in my desk.
And so notice how she has a Indiana Jones
What do you know?
style outfit too, that she's
Kerner missed the
turned
grand
into.
prize,
She's changed
What?
into.
my necklace.
Hmm.
Watch closely. The bead is made of orichalcum, the mystery metal first mentioned by Plato. Now I'll place it in the medallion's mouth.
Hmm. So it really does make a ghost appear.
Did you see that?
Now, I always thought it was orichalcum, but
Is your
orichalcum.
electric bill paid up?
So I'll try and
That
remember
is
to
Murat Sal. His spirit is close.
to pronounce it correctly. Fictional metal, pretty much. That there could have been some copper mix of some sort that would come close to it. It's not unheard of that you could potentially make a metal that would have some electronic properties. That's what a battery is. It would be a difficult process, certainly, to put a lot of energy in a small bead, but we managed to do that in batteries. Now, there is, once again, weirdness here in that there's no way to say I'm not interested in spiritual mumbo jumbo when he's already had the Ark of the Covenant experience and the Last Crusade and Temple of Doom. Each one of those were spiritual journeys. Like, he is also arguably, if he truly calls himself an atheist, which I think he does in one of the movies, he is the worst possible, most stubborn atheist to ever exist, because he has literally seen undeniable proof of a super science, pseudoscience, supernatural events, which again, when seeing evidence, if he was a good scientist, he would be talking about that and pointing it out. There's really no argument for him to be this way. It would make sense if this happened all before the movies, which may be making some of the stories occur before the movies. There is that whole Young Indiana Jones TV series, so there's room to take some of those stories and turn them into video games, and that way you can bring it to a new audience, whereas the Young Indiana Jones TV series is not airing on TV and reruns anywhere. But yeah. The only other thing that would possibly make sense is if it were the idea that Indiana Jones is just a character, sort of in the same way that Mario is just a character. And while Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3 are probably set in the same universe, there doesn't particularly have to be any continuity between, say, Mario 64 and Mario Galaxy or Mario Sunshine. Like, all of those could be just plays where Mario an actor plays as Mario, the character. Indiana Jones could be a character that did not have the experiences of the previous movies, and every movie is a standalone experience. The problem with that is, at least in Crystal Skull, we have callbacks to the previous movies. And there's probably some smaller callbacks in the previous movies anyways, so they do feel like they are connected. Let's go with "Don't try your psychic act on me." Again, this line of dialogue is linear. Almost all the lines of dialogue are.
Don't try your psychic act on me. Suppose I gave this orichalcum business any credence, which I don't.
We have no idea where to find the mythical lost city. Atlantis has been underwater for centuries. Who knows where those beads really came from? You may have just used the last bead. Again, none of these points matter, because you're going to get the same response regardless. Now, what's weird, I would also say, for ScumVM is that you have to actually highlight it. You can't just click over here to the left. Where you, well, to the right. You could click to the left because there's a piece of triangle there.
Atlantis has been underwater for centuries.
Shh. I'm getting something. Nurab Sal speaks. He bids us find the...
It's funny, she sticks her
a book, yes.
hands in the air and wiggles her fingers.
Dialogue of Plato.
Another fine myth.
So you're gonna have her in a few places, not a lot, act as your guide, telling you where to go. And the ghost of Nurab Sal really is going to be pointing you towards the end of the game. The book is a legendary hoax. If Plato wrote it, later authors would have reported it. That's not guaranteed. I think Plato just wanted to tell a tall tale. It's not any library I've ever been in. And see, ironically, this is wrong.
It's not in any library I've ever been in.
What if the Nazis have already found a copy? You ever think of that?
Let's see. So now, no matter what you pick, it says the word Iceland, so we're going to end up going to Iceland. You found this stuff in Iceland, right? She found the necklace in Iceland. What were those pieces doing in Iceland? I wonder, how did the Nazis get interested in Iceland? Why Iceland? Why not Florida, where it's warm? See, for a ScumVM game, you would kind of want the most comedic response. But the more logical thing would be to click this
What
one.
were these pieces doing in Iceland, I wonder?
Survivors must have sailed there after the Great Catastrophe.
Any port in a storm, huh? Who's working there these days?
Bjorn Heimdall, I believe.
Maybe we should pay him a visit. What do you say?
I thought you'd never ask.
So that's location 2 done, with location 1 being the simplistic area, the beginning of the game, which we will get back to that area later. Of course, it puts you in kind of a weird position because splits now. How are we gonna do this so that we do this the way we want? Like, we may want to go back and do that fight. There's really nothing to do here, so it doesn't make any big deal to overwrite that. We are going to oddly just play the game, I think, in a recursive manner. Maybe making a few save points for where the game actually starts, and a few save points for where we might try something different. Because like I said, I don't want to add 4 hours potentially to this game, or 8 hours potentially to this game, of doing the exact same thing just to get slightly different lines of dialogue. Now, this highlights the difference between playing a talky point and click adventure game in, say, 1990s, when this would have come out. I assume this would have been somewhere mid 90s. I didn't actually look up the date, compared to playing a game like this in 2021. And this problem is still very prevalent even in Mass Effect, as we are on the verge of them releasing the Mass Effect trilogy in a remastered format. How many people, I really have to question, are going to want to play that game a second time? It may have been 10-15 years since the first time they played the Mass Effect trilogy, and I'm sure they will want to play it. Some people will want to play it a second time after 15 years, but are they going to play it a third time or a fourth time? That becomes even more compounded because games like Mass Effect have the good guy ending and the good guy path and the bad guy path, and sometimes they have specific events that only unlock if you do it absolutely perfectly good guy and absolutely perfectly bad guy. None of that is in Fate of Atlantis. Fate of Atlantis is very nice to you. It really doesn't ever lock you out of a sequence. Instead, it asks you very specifically, hey, do you want to go to this path, or this path? And once it asks you that question, that's where the middle game branches into 3 very separate paths, and then they merge back together at the end of the story. And the end of the story is the same. There is some randomization, so there might be a reason why you would want to play the first act and the third act multiple times, but it's not really worth it any more than trying to hear different lines of dialogue. And I would definitely be more interested in just moving forward and playing The Emperor's Tomb and The Infernal Machine, which are 2 Indiana Jones games I've never played. So when I think about how this game is made and how more Indiana Jones games I feel like should be made, linear, easy to beat point and click adventure games around either young Indiana Jones or just remakes of the Ark of the Covenant, since there was no point and click around that, or Temple of Doom, since there was no point and click around that. Those would be what I would kind of hope for. But I would also kind of hope for Unreal Engine and controller support and just slight modifications or improvements. What you very possibly would run into is someone creating very simplistic slide puzzles or like hidden object puzzles and in those kinds of elements that we see in hidden object games very often, and then putting an Indiana Jones story around that, and that might work, it might not, whereas the puzzles in this game are much more original and thought through a little bit more. Suppose I could go on longer. We've already gone an hour. This is as good a place as any to end this episode, so as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.